Good afternoon, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and get started, and then sort of as folks join us, they can jump in as we're going. So I'm Callie Cornell. I'm with the Center for Collaborative Education, and we're so excited to have everyone this afternoon. We'd like to officially welcome you this afternoon to the first Innovation Pathways program spotlight of this school year. We're really excited today to learn more about one of our Mass Hire and local school partnerships that are part of the Innovation Pathways community. We hope you are all healthy and safe and that the beginning of your school year has been going well, all things considered. We recognize that this continues to be an extremely difficult time for all of us, and so we're really grateful that you made the time to be here with us this afternoon. To kick us off, sort of a couple of logistics notes. We are recording this webinar, and so it will be posted for you and for your colleagues to view after. We also do have a closed captioning available should you require or want the live transcription. So at the top left-hand corner of your Zoom screen, you should see a red live button that looks like the image on the slide that we're currently sharing. If you click on that down arrow, you will see an option to open a web browser window to view these closed captions in real time. And so while Zoom and virtual meeting platforms have sort of become second nature to many of us, we wanted to share just a few tips and tricks and reminders to make the most of this virtual webinar this afternoon. We'll ask that you mute yourself while the presenters or other participants are speaking so we can combat any background noises. Adjust your lighting accordingly so that we can see you, especially when we move into our small group discussions. And we'll be making use of the chat feature today, so be sure to open up that chat window so that you can contribute and read others as they're posting along the way. And if you'd like to see the presenters throughout the workshop, you can click the speaker view in your Zoom control panel, and the person that's speaking will stay sort of at the forefront of your screen, so you'll be able to see those folks' faces as they're presenting. And later in the webinar, we'll be making use of breakout rooms, so make sure to follow the prompts so that you can join those when it's time. This is our Innovation Pathways team, and we're all so excited to be here with you today. Again, for those who might have missed it, I'm Callie Cornell, the Innovation Pathways consultant with the Center for Collaborative Education. I'm joined by our DESE colleagues, Jennifer Guakin and Carrie Occasion. And from CCE, my colleague Lauren Toda is here with us, and you'll be hearing from her a little bit later in the webinar. And Oscar Santos and Diana LeBeau are not with us. Actually, Diana is with us today, but Oscar's not. But those are names you might recognize as critical parts of our Innovation Pathways team. And for those who are with us or for the first time and might be unfamiliar with CCE, we're a local Boston-based organization whose mission is to transform schools to ensure all students succeed. CCE is partnering with DESE to provide technical assistance to both existing Innovation Pathways designees as well as those who are in the application process this year. And we're hosting a number of events throughout the school year, including workshops, webinars, program spotlights like this one, professional learning communities, and other types of events to support sharing of ideas and connections across the Innovation Pathways Programs Network. So some of you who have joined this call have indicated that you're just at the very beginning stages of learning about innovation pathways. And so we wanted to very quickly review what are innovation pathways. They are state designated programs that connect student learning to in-demand broad industry sectors and guide participating students to relevant post-secondary education and training. So the programming is designed to provide students with the coursework and experiences in high demand industry areas. And they're designed to create strong partnerships with employers in order to expose students to career options and help them develop the knowledge and skills related to their chosen field of study. Participation in this kind of pathway really contextualizes student learning. It engages students in their high school experience and can lead students to opportunities for meaningful careers in relevant industry sectors once they finish high school and then into post-secondary education or training. In January 2017, the boards of elementary and secondary education and higher education jointly approved 5 guiding principles for both innovation pathways and early college pathways in order to receive designation as either type. Applicants are required to demonstrate that their programming is rooted in all 5 of the guiding principles. And those principles are listed here on the screen: equitable access, guided academic pathways, enhanced student supports, connections to career, and effective partnerships. There are currently 99 innovation pathway programs across the state, 38 of which were newly designated this past school year. Innovation pathways are in 42 schools across 36 districts in Massachusetts, and thus far, 4,000 students across the state are engaged in innovation pathways programming. It's also worth sharing that there's a really good distribution of pathway programming across priority sectors. And to date, 15 of the 16 Mass Hire boards, the local workforce boards, are active Innovation Pathways partners. And so if you'd like more information on Innovation Pathways or to see any materials from previous events, we have an Innovation Pathways Technical Assistance website that has materials from all of our previous events. It's where you can register for upcoming events. There's an Innovation Pathways toolkit and a number of other resources available at this website. That's the link on your screen here, which is tinyurl.com/MA Innovation Pathways. And I'll ask if one of my colleagues could pop that link into the chat so that folks can access it easily. So today, we're really excited to highlight a current partnership between a local workforce board and a school. We have folks from Everett High School and the Metro North Workforce Board to share with us a little bit about their programming and their ongoing partnership. So that first goal is really around exploring the work that they're doing in Everett. And then our second goal is, as always, for all of our Innovation Pathways events, we'll hope that you'll build connections across the Innovation Pathways network. So with those goals in mind, our agenda will be sort of starting off with some introductions and connections, a little bit of context setting. Following that, we'll jump right in to hear from our presenters, and you'll get a chance to, after we hear from them, to reflect on what you hear with peers in this small group, and then we'll come back for a full group Q&A. We'll have just a few minutes for closing, and that will take us to the end of our hour together. Before we dive in, we wanted to take a moment to review CCE's established community agreements, which are similar to group norms. These days, a lot of us are spending a lot of time in remote and virtual meetings, so it's worth reminding ourselves of these agreements. I'll give you a moment to review these. I won't read them to you, but I'll ask you to pick out one agreement you want to keep in mind as we go through the webinar this afternoon. You don't have to share it with anybody. You don't have to put it in the chat. Just sort of note for yourself which community agreement you'd like to keep in mind as we move through the afternoon. And please, if there's anything that you'd like to add or change, please feel free to share that in the chat now. Great. And then before we go any further, we want to acknowledge that these were not in ordinary times, and this cartoon is titled Rocket Science, the Online Course, with a note that says, remember to open the window and tip, did you pack a snack? So here with this cartoon, we just wanted to share a moment of levity as we remind ourselves that this current crisis reminds us that a lot of learning can be done remotely, but a lot cannot. And when we are in remote professional learning, it requires us to be flexible and understanding. There are distractions and interruptions from partners and children and pets and technology glitches, and we recognize that all of those things can and likely will happen, but we'll be patient with one another as we engage in this professional learning together. So with that, we wanted to do a quick connections activity to get to know who's here on the webinar. We had quite a few folks who had registered. So if you could please, in the chat, share with us your name, school district, or organization, and let us know what's something that you're curious about learning today. So we'll give you a moment to put into the chat your name, school district, or organization, and something that you're really curious about learning from our presenters today. Excellent. Seeing some folks come in. We have folks from across the state. We've got Nantucket joining us. Hello. And Carver folks. Excellent. Barnstable, Haverhill, Lowell. It's moving so fast. It's hard to keep up seeing them. We've got a really great variety of folks. Awesome. Hello, we've got folks from workforce boards, from school districts, from charter schools, from traditional public schools. Awesome. So if you could continue putting in those chat pieces, let us know who you are, where you're from, and something you're really curious about learning today. We'll try to keep those things in mind, sort of comb through them as our presenters are going, and anything that we don't touch on as part of the presentation, we'll hopefully loop back to as part of our Q&A section. So now on to our main event. Describing employer and workforce board partnerships has been a frequently requested topic from the Innovation Pathways community over the past year. And so this particular program spotlight will showcase one partnership example, their lessons learned, and the goals they have for continued collaborative partnership. Just to ground us, before we jump in, earlier I mentioned the 5 guiding principles that Innovation Pathways designees are required to demonstrate in their programming. Today's presentation really focuses on the effective partnership guiding principle, by which a formal partnership with the local workforce board and one or more employers is a required part of the Pathways program. Innovation Pathways designations requires schools to leverage strong partnerships with their local MassHire, local workforce boards, and employers to provide students with career awareness and work-based learning activities. And the MassHire board and employers should continue to be active partners to support the program once it's implemented. So this partnership between school and MassHire board plays out differently everywhere. And so we're really excited to highlight one example of how a partnership is working. And so with that, I'd like to introduce our presenters for the day. So we're really excited to hear from these 2 amazing folks. We have Heather Darby, who is at the Metro North Workforce Board. She's been there for 2 years now. She initially was there as the youth program specialist, then to youth programs manager, and her current role, which is a new one to her, so congratulations, Heather, is STEM programs manager. She came to a workforce board from the world of education and community development, really centered around employment. We also have joining us today Jonah Hooks, who's the Director of Guidance for the Everett Public Schools. Prior to this role, which is also a new role for Jonah, she served as a guidance counselor at Everett High School and a social worker at the Department of Children and Families. And so in these roles, Jonah is dedicated to meeting the academic and social emotional needs of the students that she serves. And so we're so excited to have this team to share with us their experience, their expertise, and their lessons learned thus far. I'm going to turn it over to Heather and Jonah, but I'd say to the folks who are in our audience, if you have clarifying questions while our presenters are sharing, please feel free to put those in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat throughout for clarifying questions. If you have other questions, probing questions, or sort of want to know a little bit more, hold those for the Q&A, sort of jot them down, keep them in mind, and we'll circle back to those after our formal presentation piece. So with that, I will turn it over to Heather and Jonah. I can't see you, or I'm sorry, I can't hear you both. And I'm got a number of screens up, so can't quite see you here, but wanted to just remind you to unmute yourself so that we can all hear you.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My name is Jonah Hooks. I am the new Director of Guidance. Like Callie mentioned, I am new to this role as of August. Previously, I was one of the guidance counselors here at the high school, but last year I was the Academy STEM counselor. So just wanted to start off with, I'm not sure if we have the video next, but we have a video to present to you guys just on how we present this information to our students. When we were introducing the different academies and pathways, we put together a video for our students, our faculty, our community, just to kind of give a brief overview of the academy model.
All right, so you should be able to see my screen, I believe.
Yes.
In Everett, our schools have partnered with educators, employers, and community leaders to implement a new approach to high school education.
Together, we are transforming our high school, strengthening the connection between what we learn in the classroom with what we may do after graduation, making learning more meaningful and giving us the skills we need to be college and career ready.
We call this transformation the Academies of Everett.
The academies allow us to choose a thematic course of study, such as engineering, healthcare, law, government, and more.
We will take general education courses such as math, English, science, and social studies, but they will be taught through the theme of our academy.
Incoming ninth graders will enroll in Career and College Seminar, where they will learn the skills necessary to be successful in high school. Then, they will choose an academy and pathway for their 10th, 11th, and 12th grade years.
Choosing a pathway, such as the education pathway within the Academy of Health and Public Service, is like choosing a college major. These pathways are smaller learning communities that provide all students with a sense of belonging and help us develop strong student-teacher relationships.
No matter what academy or pathway we choose, our courses will relate to real problems being faced by real companies. Opportunities like job shadowing and internships will provide hands-on experiences that help us understand career options and provide increased technical and soft skills.
We used research on high demand, high wage, real job opportunities in our region and parent, student, teacher, and community input to determine the academies offered.
By leveraging our personal interests, school becomes more relevant and will increase our academic achievement, attendance, and graduation rates.
Our goal: ensure all graduates have the opportunity to enroll in a college or other post-secondary option, enlist in military service, or become employed in a sustainable career with opportunities for growth.
Most importantly, it will prepare all of our students for college, career, and life.
To find out more or to get involved, visit everettpublicschools.org and click on Academies of Everett.
Thank you. I absolutely love this video. It seemed like the students were really receptive to the video and kind of just gave them a brief overview of what they expected, what to expect last year. So Everett has about 2,100 students. We are very close to Boston, about 20 minutes away from Boston. And our students not always follows the road of college. So when we started the academy model, we also incorporated a CTE program at the same time. It definitely presented some challenges for us, but it was just a way to give our students as much opportunities as possible for the future. The breakdown of the demographics, you know, we are an urban community with a high Hispanic population, also with African-American and white community. Our students also, we have a group of high-risk students, students with disability, and we have a large population of EL students also. So this model really helped connect everyone to a pathway, to a CTE program. Everyone found their place, it feels like. So we have 5 different academies. Within those academies, we have CTE programs that are incorporated. We start off with our freshman academy, where everyone starts off with an exploratory program, and they take a college and career seminar course in addition to their classes. And we currently have about 560 students in that academy. Next slide. The next one we have is our science, technology, and engineering program. We have 5 different pathways where students can decide after their freshman year if they want to be a part of CTE, if they want to do the academies. But you know, the 5 pathways are engineering, biotech, computer science, cybersecurity, and then we have our SEED program also. So our 8th graders are actually able to decide if they want to be part of the SEED program, where the students start off right from the very beginning as a freshman, where they start taking these hands-on classes in STEAM. We also have the Business, Law, and Hospitality program, which also has 5 pathways. 4 of these pathways are, or 3 of these pathways are part of the CTE program. And we also have the Entrepreneurial Finance Academy and the Lauren Government. When students select their academies, the academies in CTE, they do this at the end of their freshman year. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I said that. And when we are working with our students around scheduling their classes, they are expected to take 1 pathway course every year. We also have the Health Academy and Public Service. This academy, I would say, is something that we've had at Everett High School for a long period of time. Before we had academies, we had the Allied Health program, and this program would say morphed into this academy. Our students are able to, any student who is interested in the health fields are able to be a part of the health assistant, health science, medical assistant program. We also have the allied health component too. We have teachers on staff that are nurses. One of the great things about these pathways is our students, after they graduate, are able to receive not only a diploma from Everett High School, but they are also able to receive a certificate. So our medical assistant program, at the end of it, they'll be able to get a certificate in health assistant, and students will be able to work when they graduate from high school. We also have the Construction and Machine Academy with also 5 pathways. We have the Machine Tool Technology, Building Construction, Hospitality, Culinary Arts, and Law and Government, which is also another popular academy that we have.
And that brings us to me. Good afternoon, everybody. So with all the different academies and pathways that Everett has, it's only fitting that their innovation pathways designations are manufacturing, health and public services, as well as business and finance. And so they received manufacturing designation the summer of 2018, health and public services the spring of 2019, and business and finance spring of 2020, right in the midst of COVID. So I'm here to talk about really the essence of our partnership, right? And so that's going to be one of my running themes, but I must say that another theme underlying that really is transitions. And when I say transitions, I just mean all these changes that both Everett businesses and the Workforce Board have been through. You've heard that my current role is new to me. Mrs. Hooks's role is new to her, and there have been so many transitions, either within our organizations or outside of our organizations. But because our partnership is so strong, the essence of our partnership is so strong that we are able to continue working seamlessly. And so I'm going to speak specifically now. Part of the essence of our partnership is that outreach to partners, right? So Everett really took the initiative when it came to Innovation Pathways application and receiving their designation. They reached out to us earlier on, and while I wasn't in the role at the time, I learned about this. They reached out to us earlier on, invited the Workforce Board to breakfast, and sat down other business partners, the community really involved in this partnership, to say, here's the plan, here's what we would like to accomplish. We would love you involved, and let's work on this together, essentially, right? And so on top of taking that initiative, Everett really nurtured the relationships to continue to develop the partnerships. With open communication, when I started working with Everett in 2018, I felt like so warmly received that I was like, wow, I want to do everything I can for this school. And they continue to have open relationships. And while I am no longer as directly involved with Everett High as I was before, I look forward to continuing to do all I can for the school and the other schools that I work with as well. And I did not have a very good spot to put in diversity and inclusion, so I just thought I would put it here. But you heard before how very diverse Everett High community is, as well as the City of Everett community is overall. And so this has worked in their favor in terms of meeting meeting some of the requirements for the innovation partnerships. It has to be an open and inclusive program. And so it's been that way with our different initiatives and programs. We have seen, students with disability, early language learners. We have seen, first generation students, you name it, we have seen them involved in the partnerships and initiatives that we have put forth at Everett High. Next slide, please. And let's not forget that DESE is a partner in this as well. And they have been instrumental in providing the framework of what Innovation Pathways is. So if you have any questions whatsoever as you're putting together your Innovation Pathway packages, reach out to DESE because they're really very helpful. And now they have a toolkit, for Innovation Pathways. It's a wonderful tool to assist in planning and developing IP pathways. Everett itself, like I said, did a lot of this networking to get all the partners together. So whether it was new, what are they called? New intelligence in the beginning of their designation with manufacturing, or later on if they it was developing partnerships with iBook or Northeast Bank, or Northeast Technology or Everett Bank. They put in a lot of work to develop these partnerships to have as best Innovation Pathways program available for the students as possible. So just my hat off to Everett on that, and just so many other, groundwork that they do. Next slide, please. And so one specific program that I want to talk about in terms of our partnership with Everett High and IP is the Everett High Resilient Coders Training Program. The Workforce Board received a grant thanks to Commonwealth Corporation. And so we worked really closely in developing what this would look like for the students, for the school, for everyone involved. As this was a STEM-related partnership, we used Signal Success as our curriculum, which I delivered weekly during this training program, but there had to be created a technical aspect for this. And so Ben Gross, who was our technical assistant, did a wonderful job in developing this and just guiding me through the delivery of this, constant support on this program. And he, monitored the program delivery very closely, not because Ben was a micromanager, but because he and everybody else involved in this program cared so much about the success of the Resilient Coders Training Program. And so when we had 20 students out of 20 seats and students still waiting in line to be seated, we saw a cross section of students from all the pathways, the original pathway of manufacturing, as well as future pathways in health and business and finance. And it was just a wonderful thing, because then they really gained a lot of skills that they could use as they move through their future pathways as those developed. Resilient Coders had a wonderful relationship with the workforce board, with the school, and with the students. You know, Emilio Murillo, who was the instructor, was very close in age to the students. He related very well to the students, not only in language, English and Spanish, but in speaking the language of the youth. The students themselves were great in this training program because they, you know, they really organically just worked with each other. You can't do coding without being partners, without being a team. And so they worked with each other, whether it was through language, you know, whether they needed to assist their fellow students with language or the actual coding or creating their websites or what have you. They really worked together as a cohesive unit. And that's something that I will forever be proud of. And I hope that they will always be proud of it themselves. Next slide, please. And so these are just some photos of the students who were involved in the program. You know, on my right is Emilio, the instructor, instructing some of the students. On the left is one of the students who are instructing her peers, just always helping each other out, always throwing ideas off them, bouncing ideas off each other. And that made for a wonderful experience for them and the instructors and myself. We were all really dedicated. Emilio would call all the time on his off days. Is it my day today? You know, do I need to come in? You know, I myself went in with a beanie and delivered instruction the entire time with my beanie on because I knew I was coming down with a fever, but I would not allow these students to miss their material for that day. They were so dedicated that they all voted to come in during spring break as a program crossed spring break. And they decided that they don't want a break in their training. They want to learn, they want a smooth, you know, learning experience. And so the school made it possible for us to all come in on the spring break and continue our training. Next slide, please. And so one of the, another thing that we were able to do in terms of partnerships was to have a coding panel. And so we made connections with businesses and had reps come in to speak to the students about what it's like to be in the tech world, right? As they were learning behind the scenes about networking in tech. And so the picture on the right is an example of that session that was going on. And though not all the graduates are here, out of the 20 students, we had 19 graduate and 1 did not graduate the program due to extreme personal circumstances. Otherwise, she would definitely have done so. And just congratulations to all of them once again. And Everett, you know, you run a great ship. Next slide, please. Another grant that I want to make mention of just quickly is the Bank of New York Mellon grant. One of the things that we found was that BNY Mellon had an affinity for Everett. And so we were able to receive a grant, and we do receive this grant on a continuous basis to further allow us to provide service for Everett High. And with their affinity, we hope to grow this partnership and increase the level of funding in the future that we receive from them. But if you find businesses or organizations out there with an affinity to your school or your district or what have you that relates, go for it and just nurture that relationship, and hopefully it'll grow more. Next slide, please. And so some of the other ways that we partner with Everett High and Innovation Pathways is to engage in the advisory board meetings. We attend advisory board meetings and make contributions where we can. I know that COVID interrupted the Everett advisory board meetings that we were attending. But, you know, hopefully we'll be able to get back on track with that. We facilitate workshops, particularly in health and public service pathways, which Health and Public Service Academy, which cuts into the pathways that they have there, and we connect partners with school programs. So while Everett did develop a lot of the initial partnerships with the employers involved and the businesses involved, we continue to, look out for other connections that can be made and share with them. And work to develop employment opportunities. The last thing that I was working on before COVID interrupted us was developing employment opportunities throughout the school year and the summer with the City of Everett, working with Everett High administration. I think that's it. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Heather and Jonah. I'm going to turn it over to Laura to guide us through directions for our small group discussion and then into our Q&A.
Thanks, Callie. Thank you truly, Heather and Jonah, so much. I know that you both did quite a bit of reflection, thinking about what you wanted to share with the group. And I'm excited or sorry to say that you're not off the hook yet, because now we give the chance for everyone who's been listening to think about what questions they have for you. So we are going to move into a brief amount of small group time, really just to help you sort of get the juices flowing, think about what questions you want to bring to our extended Q&A experience we're going to have. So I'm going to share here in the chat a link to a reflection document that we're going to invite you all to share your thoughts in. That's going to help us facilitate the Q&A. So we'll ask you to populate some of your early thinking there. In just a minute, Callie is going to be sending out the invitation to the breakout spaces. We ask you to please accept the prompt that comes across on your screen. And as you are able to do so, we invite you to unmute yourself and share your video so that you can have conversation with your small group. We estimate that we're going to give you about 5 minutes in that small group space, but we'll be sure to send you along a prompt with about a minute warning so that you know when we're going to invite you back to this large space. Thank you so much. We hope that those breakout spaces were fruitful spaces for you. I do see that there's been a number of contributions to the reflection tool, so thank you for that. As always, that's really helpful both purposefully right now for us to direct the Q&A. And it's also helpful for us to use as an ongoing source of hearing what you all in Innovation Pathways are thinking about and what's really at the forefront of your mind. So feel free to continue, add contributions to that document. We're not sort of closing it off right now. It's just a starting place for us. But Heather and Jonah, who's not at the top of my screen, but she will be when she speaks again. We're going to start asking you some questions, and I'll encourage our participants, if anything surfaces as a result of responses from Heather and Jonah, please feel free to put those questions directly in the chat, and I will monitor the chat, and my colleague Callie will help with that as well. So we'll be on the lookout. But we're going to start right with the first question in the reflection tool. So the first question we have from our listeners today is, how do you engage key stakeholders and develop partners without scaring people away? And Jonah, I'm going to maybe ask you this first from the school-based perspective. What are your thoughts on how to engage stakeholders and maybe sort of ask reasonable amounts of contribution from them?
So one of the things we did have, although the role is different, we had someone who did all that type of communication between the stakeholders. And I felt like it was very crucial to have that person because he kind of coordinated the advisory board meetings. He maintain that communication with people. So it was just one person. When we got involved, it was a large group of people. And I think that when you have a lot of people involved, things get, it gets very confusing. So just having that 1 or 2 point people, I think, is very helpful to maintain that communication.
Thanks, Jonah. And there's another question here that I think is related. So on the topic of sort of people who are contributing to this work from the school-based perspective, could you talk a little bit about what you would say the team looks like in the work, and what different roles people have, and maybe if the team has evolved at all through the process in terms of maybe your numbers grew, or maybe you narrowed in and sort of came down to more of a core group. But could you talk a little bit about like, who are the people that are really directing this work from the school side?
Okay, so we had, I was mentioning, we had an executive, executive coordinator, but we also, each academy had an assistant principal, and they were key people that was involved in the process. We also had guidance counselors somewhat involved also, and we had lead teachers for each academy, so they were also involved. So it was a large group of people that were involved in the process.
Great, thanks. And I'm going to ask this question maybe to both of you. I'm curious about your perspectives. We have a few questions that have surfaced that I would describe as being on the theme of inclusion. How do we support inclusion in programming? So one of the questions is around how do you support students with disabilities through being a participant in Pathways? And we also have a question about what about students that it was more difficult to try to get them to enroll in a pathway this year, or students who maybe had more challenges because of their learning circumstance or their learning location, and participating in pathway work this year?
Yes, it's definitely a challenge that we have faced in terms of the students with disabilities or English learners. We've provided the opportunity for everyone to select an academy or a pathway. However, we face challenges for, like, I would say, scheduling purposes. So, with students with disabilities, they already have certain classes that they need to take. EL learners have certain classes that they need to take, and they're offered at certain periods. And then when you came to the pathways, then sometimes those pathway classes conflicted with those other major courses. So it's definitely a challenge that we're still kind of working through at this time.
And I just want to say that particularly with, the coding training program, and just in general, we did have students with disabilities participating, and being aware of that, and being also a connecting activities workforce board, and Everett being a connecting activities school, to be able to reach out to either the counselors or transition specialists or whomever involved with the students is key. To know not necessarily exactly what the student is dealing with, but to know that here's a student for whom I could reach out to a transition specialist or a counselor for is just a big help.
I'm actually going to jump in and do a quick plug. So next Thursday, exactly a week from right now, we have another webinar focused on building inclusive pathways with a panel of folks from both local and national who will speak to ensuring access to work-based learning opportunities for students with disabilities and English learners. And so that might be, if you've not already registered, that might be of interest to some folks here today.
Yeah, thanks for that, Kelly. And we'll provide the link for registration for that as we round out today. Heather, I wanted to ask you a question, one I feel like can be directed right to you. So you talked about sort of themes you would use to describe the work, and one of the themes you said was around the idea of transitions. So lots of transitions happening. And I'm wondering if you could just offer maybe just like one or two lessons you've learned about the role of flexibility in supporting schools in this work.
Oh, Absolutely. I'd say even with all the changes that took place while I was working with Everett and working on the different programs, that, there was still a sense of stability because key folks remained, right? And so as some would leave and new folks would come, there were always at least 2 or 3 key folks who would remain and who would have the history of the Innovation Pathways program, who would be able to make the connections that are needed and who would be able to continue developing the relationships. And I think like that's the essence of it, right? To be able to, around all the chaos that's going on, to be able to have like these centers to ground the program still would be key.
And our time moves so quickly. So I want to ask one more question to both of you. This has been an incredibly challenging, unique year for, well, everybody, but especially people who work in and with schools. And so I'm curious, just like really briefly, 30 seconds or so, if each of you, Heather and Jonah, could offer us what motivates you in this work? So like, why do you believe in the Pathways work and what keeps you going when you're up against obstacles?
So I just think about the kids. To me, it's very important that every student that leaves here with certain skills or something an ability to be able to be successful. And that's really what drives me. It's important for my kids to be successful. I actually graduated from Everett High, so I'm very much invested in the work that I do and helping the students because I truly view myself as one of these students.
And for me, it's education. And education looks differently for a lot of people, but it's education nonetheless. And I believe the Innovation Pathways program is an excellent opportunity for students to get not just the education, but hands-on work-based experience training in their intended careers. And that is also crucial. So learning in different forms is crucial. And Innovation Pathways offers that.
Thank you. Well, thank you again so much, Heather and Jonah. If people are comfortable, maybe a little jazz hands, or you can use the applause feature. Just so much gratitude for you being here today. I want to acknowledge to both of you and to all of our participants that there are so many questions and so many exciting sort of wows and wonders that people have elevated. So we on the back end will make sure that we have some form of follow-up from today to make sure that we can keep tending to all of the questions that you've had. But truly, thank you, Heather and Jonah, for both being here and volunteering your time to share a little bit about your work so far. So we are going to transition to rounding out today. And if you wouldn't mind bumping forward for us, Callie, awesome, thank you. So just a reminder again, as Callie pointed out at the beginning of the session, tinyurl.com/MA Innovation Pathways, which Jennifer shared earlier in the chat as well, is a great sort of hub central location for resources that you'll find helpful in your work. Next, please. So here are just a few upcoming events. Callie already threw in that plug for us for November 19th. So we are going to be having a webinar specifically about building inclusive pathways with a focus on students with disabilities and with English learners. For people who are looking for some support around the Part B application, there's going to be a webinar on December 2nd. Office hours coming up on December 3rd. There are still openings available, 30-minute time slots if you're looking for some of that coaching support. And I'll ask Jennifer, I think you had it. Oh, Jennifer's already got it in there. Fantastic. So the registration link is in there for anybody who's interested in that inclusive pathways piece. Next slide, please. Great. So we are, Callie has just shared in the chat a survey. If you've participated in any of our events in the past, You know that we really care about your responses here, and they've really helped inform what happens next within Innovation Pathways, and particularly what supports we want to provide to you. So before you jump off today, if you could just right-click and copy that link, it'll take you just a couple of minutes to provide some really important feedback to us. And with that, I want to offer appreciation to all of you for being here. I know that particularly in these times, there are so many things competing for every minute of your day. So it means a lot to us that this was important to you to be here, and we hope that it was helpful for you. And please be sure to let us know future ways that we can continue to support your work. And I hope you all have a very nice afternoon. Thank you so much.